Okay, let's get going again. I'm going to ask you another question for the chat. The question is, when doing a benefit cost analysis of a publicly funded project, do you think that the excess burden of taxation should be included as a cost? So your answer could be yes, or it could be no, or it could be I don't know, or it could be I don't know what the excess burden of taxation is. Any of those would be interesting answers. Okay, we're getting a really interesting diversity of answers there. So let me first explain, there's a fair few people who don't know what it is. So let me explain what it is and we'll see where we get to. I have to share my screen. All right. So the excess burden of taxation is an observation that collecting and spending $1 of tax money on a project or a policy costs society more than $1. So it's an additional cost of public spending. And the main cause that we care about of this is that it generates a dead weight loss through distorting economic behaviour. It's not just a transfer, it also has a cost through influencing by creating some disincentives. So for example, tax can create a disincentive to work, or it can create a disincentive to save, or it can create a disincentive to invest. And that all of these things impose a cost of one sort or another. How big is it? Well, there are lots of different estimates being made. It depends on the tax system. It depends on the specific type of tax, and it depends on the country where these estimates are being made. In Australia, we had a review of the tax system quite a while ago now, but the last time I saw a substantial review of excess burden numbers. So the Henry Review looked at the marginal excess burden of taxation for a variety of different sorts of tax. In fact, the list was much longer than this. I've just grabbed out some examples. And they ranged from 8% for land taxes, so they estimated that land taxes were not very distorting, through to, I don't even know what insurance taxes are, to be honest, but anyway, 67% marginal excess burden on insurance taxes and pretty high on corporate income tax. So they can be quite big. I've seen other numbers. Are they in here? Here we go. The UK. Some estimates for the UK sort of clustered around 50%. So that looks like a really big additional impact on the economy, on the community as a result of tax. Should it be included in a benefit cost analysis? Well, I'd start by observing that often it is not included. And some argue that it should not be included on the basis that if it was going to be included, that would imply that doing or spending or not spending this money on the project would make a difference to how much tax was collected. And if it's not going to make a difference to how much tax collected, then it's not going to make any difference to this efficiency cost. Others say that it should be included on a sort of a bigger picture argument, which is along the lines of, if it was excluded from all benefit cost analyses, rather than just looking at the current one you're currently working on, then more projects would get funded, and that efficiency cost, and ultimately more tax revenue would be collected as a result, and so ultimately there would be that efficiency cost imposed on society. Interestingly, government guidelines vary quite a bit. So I notice that in South Australia, the guidelines don't mention it at all. In the UK, the government guidelines say do not include it on the basis that it won't change the amount of tax that's collected. In Australia, the most common response is along the lines of, well, it seems to imply we don't really know. Do a sensitivity analysis with it included and excluded, and present that to decision makers. That's except in Victoria. In Victoria, the advice is to include it, but include it at 8%. So that seems like a bit of a cop-out too. You saw that 8% was the very lowest number from the Henry Tax Review. I think if you're going to include it, you should include it at a realistic, sort of a median or average sort of a level. New Zealand says include it at 20%. So it's interesting. There is clearly no crisp consensus in whether it should be included or not. I've got an opinion. This is my personal opinion, my judgment. Well, one bit of advice first. If you're doing a BCA for a particular state government, you probably want to know what their guidelines say and, do that. If you don't have any guidance, if I don't have any guidance, what I do is I include it at a moderate level of about 20%. I have 20% as the default level in my template. But I also would do sensitivity analysis with and without the 20%, since most state governments seem to want that. And the other point there, it says apply to resources obtained from tax. The money that is spent on your project might not all come from tax. If it comes from other sources, then maybe you wouldn't apply the marginal excess burden to money from those other sources. Okay, I think that's all I've got.